Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to wrap a cabochon or a stone using the macrame technique, and this is using the vertical lark's head technique, and this is what it looks like. So this is the final result of what I'm going to show you, but you can obviously use this technique for many different shapes and types and sizes of stones or cabochons. This is just to show you the technique. So this is the effect running around the side. It gives a really nice effect. And then I've added beads to it as well to give it a little bit of an extra feature. You don't have to add the beads if you don't want to, you can just use the cord. And then I've made a little bail so you can wear it on anything like chain or some cord, that's up to you. So if you want to learn how to do this, then keep watching. And these are the things that I'm going to be using. Now in this case I've got an oval cabochon here, and this is just a rose quartz gemstone cabochon, and this measures 3 by 4 centimeters. But really this technique will go for any shape and size of cabochon you got, pretty much. So I'm just going to be working with this, but you can use this technique for many different kinds. And then the cord I'm going to be using is this 0.4mm s-lon cord. And this is just a black colour because I thought the contrast would be nice in the colours. But again, I'm just using this to demonstrate with. You can also use many different types of cord or thread for this piece. And now here I have some beads as well. These are just some 2mm metal spacer beads, and they're just a silver colour to go with the rest of my materials. And these are an optional extra because this technique you don't have to use the beads for, but it's just a nice little extra touch, I think. So I'm going to show you how to do this technique with beads as well. And obviously you can use other types of beads for this. You just have to make sure that the holes in your beads are large enough for your cord to fit through. And then lastly, I've got some glue here, so I'm just going to be using that to finish off the piece at the end and that. So this is just some Hypo cement glue. I just like to use this because it dries clear so you won't really be able to see it, but also it has a really fine precision nozzle on it, so you can really do some precision gluing. So get all your materials together and then let's get started. Now what I'm going to be working on is just my small macrame board here. It has these notches, so it makes it really nice and easy to work with. But you can just use anything. You can also use pins to help you along the way. But I'm just going to be working on this. And then what we want to do to get started is we need to cut our cord ready. Now like I said, I'm using the s-lon cord. And first I need 2 lengths of my shorter length. These are about 50 centimeters long. So I need 2 of them, because they'll be running along the side of your piece. And then I need 1 long length. And this is about 1.5 meters. Now these measurements are just to roughly work with my cabochon. Obviously it can be different depending on what materials that you're using, but this is just a rough guideline for the materials that I'm using. So cut your cord ready, and if you have any doubts, rather use a bit more than too short because you don't want to run out in the middle. So the first thing we need to do is we need to set our cords up on the board so they're ready to work with. So I'm taking my 2 shorter lengths first. Like I said, these will be running down the sides, and I'm just going to be using my macrame board, which is quite handy because I'm going to be using these slots. So put one end through one slot and leave a bit of a tail so you have that at the end to finish off with, like that. And then I'm just going to be using the width of one slot in this case. Obviously the width of your piece that you're going to be making here, it will depend on your cabochon really. You can make it wider or narrower depending what you need for your cabochon. But this is how I'm going to work with it. You could also just, if you're using some sort of board and then pins, you can just tie a knot and then just use the pins to space out your cords all the way down. But this is what I'm going to be doing. And then I'm going to also slot them into the slots on the bottom here, just to secure my cords into place to begin with, like that. So now they're ready, so I can start making my macrame. And then now I'm going to get out my long piece of cord, which in my case was about 1.5 meters, but again that all depends on the piece that you're making. And I'm just going to use one of the slots at the top here, just to secure it in place, so I can then continue to work with it, like that. And then now, when you can use this long piece of cord to start a macrame piece. And now the knot that we're going to be doing is called a vertical lark's head. So if you know what a lark's head knot looks like, it's basically that, but using one cord and then making them across the middle here. Now I do have a video on basic macrame knots that might be helpful, but I'm going to show you how to do it in this one as well. So I'm going to take my long piece of loose cord here, so this is my working cord, and start my first knot. Now I've just got it attached on this side, so it's coming from this side, so I'm just going to start working with this on the left side first. It doesn't matter what side you start with because you will keep continuously moving back and forth. So I'm going to get that, bring it underneath the left holding cord and pull it all the way through, and then back around on top and then back through the loop like so. So you have like a reverse 6 like this, making sure it loops back through itself, and then just pull that up a little bit so it sits roughly there. And then we need to finish off the knot so it becomes the vertical lark's head. So now I'm going to take it above this left holding cord and then bring it back underneath and then through this loop again that you created with the same cord. So we're doing the same thing, just reverse. And then you have your reverse 6 again, still your cord looping through the loop you created with the same cord, but instead of coming out underneath your loop, is now coming up through your loop. And that's the basic principle of this knot. And then you bring that up and then tighten it. Now the trick with this technique is when you're tightening your knots, you want to be careful to not over tighten them, because gradually then these two will work towards each other, and you want to make sure you leave the same spacing all the way down. So now before I move any further, we've made our first knot here, but before we continue to the other side and make a knot there, what I want to do is add in my beads, because you won't be able to do that. You need to add the beads in between your knots. So to do that, I'm going to go down to the bottom of my board again and just release my 2 holding cords. Just do one at a time. And then I'm going to use these and then put my beads onto these lines. So you just want to start adding your beads onto your holding cords here. And like I said, you want to do it onto both of them. And you just, there's no specific amount really. You just add as many beads as you need until you reach the circumference of your cabochon really. You can just do a bit at a time, and you can always take more as you go. If you used up all your beads but you need more, just add some more. Or you don't have to use them all up and just take them off at the end. So just add beads onto both of your lengths of holding cord. So I've now added on all my beads onto both lengths of cord, and I've ended up with 28 on each length. Now you just want to make sure you have the same amount, but again the amount can vary depending on the materials that you're using. So all I'm going to do is just push these down to the bottom so they're out of the way while we're working with them, and gradually take one up at a time as we need it. So that's your beads on, and we're now ready to continue with our knotting. So we've made this first knot like I showed you in the beginning. So now before we continue, I'm going to add one bead, push that up to the opposite side of the knot you made there. So this is we're going to be making a knot on this side now, on the right side. Before that we just need to push that one bead up. So that sits basically opposite the first knot you made. So we're going to use the beads to make the spacing in between our knots. So to continue making our knots, I'm going to grab the long length of our working cord again, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing as we did on this side, but we're going to be doing it on the other side here. So whether you start going above or underneath, it doesn't matter as long as you stay consistent so you get the same look throughout. I started going underneath on that one, so I'm going to do the same again. So lift up my holding cord, put my working cord underneath just that one cord and pull all of it through, and then the loop we have here, going to make sure to grab the end of the cord and pull it back through the loop like so. So we have our cord going underneath, looping back around, and then back through itself. So now we have like a 6 where our cord is starting to by going underneath. And then we can tighten that gently up to sit right below the bead, or almost right opposite the other knot. And then to finish off that knot, we need to then go above your holding cord, because we went underneath first. So go above and then loop back around by going underneath, and then pull it the rest up through the loop. So again, you get your 6, but you're looping around the opposite way than you just did. And that's what creates your vertical axe head knot again. And then you can just go in and tighten the first one properly, so that sits exactly where you want it to sit. And then you tighten up the second half of that knot, like that. And like I said, be careful not to over tighten this, because if you do that along the way, these will work their way towards each other. And we want to make sure we keep these as straight as possible all the way down. So that's the first, the next one, the first one on this side. So because we just did that knot on the right side, I'm going to put up a bead on the left holding cord, like that, just like we did in the first instance on that row. And we're just going to now repeat the same thing again. So with that bead in between, you grab your working cord, go underneath your holding cord, on the opposite side then you just did your knot, pull your cord through, and then the loop, you create it with the cord, loop back around your holding cord with that. So where on this side we get a reverse 6. Like there. And just tighten that gently, not over tighten it. And then we need to finish that knot by looping above, back around, and up through the loop. And pull it all the way through, like so. So there you have your vertical axe head again. And then tighten the first half, so you're pleased and happy with where it sits. And then when you are, tighten the other half without over tightening it. And just keep checking that you keep your distance between your holding cords, like so. And that's all you keep doing. Move your next bead up and continue. Move over to the other side now. So you're getting this crisscross, like zigzag pattern between your holding cords. And that's what's going to be the edging on your cabochon. So you want to continue doing this until you reach the length that you need it to be. And like I said, you can also do this without beads on. You just do the exact same thing, you just leave out the beads, and then what you can do is the knots will move on your holding cord, so they'll move up and down, and you can do that at the end, just that at the end. But how long you need, you figure out by measuring your cabochon. So I would normally just use a scrap piece of cord or something and lie it around the cabochon, and then that'll give you an idea of how long you need to make this piece of macrame. So I'll need it, this is the circumference of my cabochon, but so I'm going to lay this next to my piece from where I started, right there. I can keep it there, like so. And then I know I need to continue my macrame all the way down to here. Now, not quite though, because this is the circumference of the entire cabochon. What you actually need to do is make this a little bit smaller. So just, you know the length that you need to be in total, but just then make it a little bit smaller. And you can also take it off your board if you need to and measure around your cabochon as you go. But that's up to you, that's just how I like to do it. But then keep working, making your macrame with or without your beads, and then until you reach the point where you have a long enough length to reach around your cabochon. So I've now continued until I've reached the length that I need my piece to be, and I've used up all the beads that I added. And like I said, you can add more beads or take some off, it doesn't really matter. And what I've made sure to do is, at the beginning, the first bead I added was on my right side. Now like I said, it doesn't matter what side you start with, that's just what I started with. So what I want to make sure to do is the last bead I add is on my left side. And technically these two beads are loose because we don't have a knot on both sides to cage them in like we do on the rest of them. So that just means when you take your piece off of your board or whatever you're working with, just be a bit careful that they don't fall off your cord. But we need to then start incorporating the cabochon in. But like you can see, I managed to keep this fairly straight and even, and that's what you kind of want to try to do. Now if you're struggling with that, like I said, you can get some pins and help you along the way. So if I were to continue here, I would just put some pins on the inside, so in the well here, in between my holding cords, on the inside of them, to kind of hold my cords in the right position and then do my knots. So that's a way to help you try and keep it straight and even along the way. So we can now take this off the board and then start to use our cabochon. So like I said, just be careful when you take it off your board with the loose beads. I'm just going to take it off gently and keep hold of it, make sure none of my loose beads there fall off. Like so. So it's off my board now. I'll get rid of that. And this is the piece that we've made. And then you get your cabochon, it'll be running like this. So you'll be folding this basically, placing this around the outside, the side of the cabochon. So that's where, like I said, you just want to measure it and just make it slightly smaller. So this is the piece. Now we need to wrap this around a cabochon and then secure it in place. Now you do have a fair bit of loose cords left here. You have 3 on each end, but just try not to worry too much about that, because we'll be gradually doing one by one. So the ones that we use as a working cord, I'm just going to leave out for now. I'm not going to use. We're going to be focusing on the holding cords. So what you want to do is, what you can do as well to take it off, if you want to test it against your cabochon, just grab your cabochon and then fold this around. And just roughly to begin with. This is just basically to see if the size fits. So that looks pretty good to me, because you want, these are your holding cords where you added your beads, you want them to run just slightly smaller than the very outside of your cabochon to be able to cage it in and hold it in place. So that's the principle of it. And I know this fits, so what I'm going to do is take 2 of my holding cords here, get this out of the way. So I'm just going to start with the bottom ones, it doesn't matter which ones you start with. I'm just going to take these 2, so the ones that I've got on the bottom here, and what I'm going to do is bring them together and then tie a regular overhand knot like this, and then tighten that so it brings my 2 ends closer together like this. You just try and get the other cords out of the way so you don't get them mixed up. And then when you tighten it completely, you basically will have a piece where your beads are running all the way around and you can't really see the join. So that's one knot. To tighten that securely in place, because obviously you want the knot to stay, I'm just going to keep hold of it with my fingers and then tie one more, just a regular overhand knot. And then tighten that down, make sure the first knot is tight. So when you tighten this and you look at it from this side, it basically looks just like one continuous piece. So you don't have an obvious join there. So that's the one side. Now you can use that as your back side or your front side, that doesn't really matter. But that will be one side to cage in your cabochon. So this is what we have now, and you obviously have a few cords here, it can be a little bit confusing. Just try and kind of organize them, separate them out, figure out what's what. What you want to do now is you want to get your other 2 working cords, so the ones that are loose still you haven't used. So the one where on one side you have a loose bead, so on the opposite side of the ones you just tied. The rest I want to kind of bring up towards the top here, like this, just to kind of get them out of the way and so they don't get caught anywhere, stuck in place. So it's these two cords that I'm going to be working with. But before I tighten these, we need to put the cabochon in place, or else you won't get it in there, because that's the whole purpose, obviously. So it's going to be hold taut in there once you're done. So you just place that on top of the circle you already made, where you tied your knot before. That's going to be on one side, and then on the other side here, as you tighten that, that'll cage it in. So on your side here, all the crisscrosses what you did with your cord, it's going to be what catches it on the side. So we just need to do the same thing we did on the other side here. Tie a regular overhand knot with your two loose cords. The ones that were your holding cords are very opposite each other. A regular overhand knot, tighten it down, like so. So it's nice and tight again like the other side, so you can't really see a join there. And put your finger on it if you want to. Tie another knot to secure it in place. And then just make sure the first one is nice and tight before you tighten the second one, because the second knot will hold that first one in place. Now this is kind of the most fiddly part with this technique, but just take your time and it will work. Like that. Now that's nice and secure. And then basically your cabochon now is held nice and securely in place. It's not going to come out, and it looks nice and neat all the way around. Now obviously now you're just left with all these excess cords at the top, so now we just need to finish those off, and then you have your finished cabochon. So to do that, what I want to do, because at the moment you have 3 cords here on each side of your cabochon. So you have 3 towards the back and 3 towards the front. I want to kind of bring them together at the top here, but also you can see you have a little gap at the top. So to kind of disguise that gap, I want to bring these together. So I just take one from each side at a time, the ones that I feel like are most opposite each other, and I want to tie them across the middle of the side here of the cabochon, and just do a regular overhand knot again, so it ties across the middle and almost acts to continue this crisscross pattern that you've done all the way around. Now I just want to tie a double knot just to secure it in place, otherwise it will come undone. Tighten the first one, and then tighten the second one. So that's that one. Do the same with the rest. Just choose ones that are most opposite each other. Across the middle of the side of your cabochon. Like so. And then the last ones, and as you can see we're filling in that space, that gap we had. And just the last 2 loose ones. Across the middle. Make sure the first one is tight before you tighten the second one. Like so. So now you have all your cords coming out pretty much from the same place here, right at the top of the cabochon, in the center of the side of it, and they're all nice and close to each other, and you kind of closed up that gap you had at the top and there where there wasn't any cord. So that is basically your cabochon wrap now, and you can really do with your cords that you have left over what you want. You can either use these, if you have longer lengths, you could start with even longer lengths and use these up the sides to continue to then make into the necklace part if you want to, so it's all connected. Or you can make a simple bail and then attach it to something else. I think I just want to make a simple bail with it, so we just want to use these excess cords to do that with. So to do that, all I'm going to do is use a simple square knot. Now I just want to look at my cords because I want to choose the longest ones, because obviously you're not going to get far with these short lengths. So I want to choose the longest cords that I have available. Something like this. And then I want to get the rest into the center, like this. And I'm just going to make square knots around the rest of the cords here. So the 4 cords left in the middle, using the 2 longest ones to make square knots around them. So you just make a simple square knot. Again, I have a video on how to do basic macrame knots. That might be helpful if you're not sure how to do these. It's just the first one is going to be most difficult until you get going. So obviously your cords are kind of all over the place until you gather them all up. Like so. And you just want to make square knots. Continue to do that until you've reached a long enough length you can turn it into a bail. So I've now continued making my square knots and I've reached a point now where I have a little piece done. Now how long you make this piece is going to determine how large your bail is going to be. So you can make it really long and get a nice large bail, or just make it nice and small like this so it's not too substantial. But you could also, obviously also depends how much cord you got left. You could purposely use more cords from the beginning to make sure you have long lengths left, especially if you want to make the necklace part from these cords as well. Then I suggest you make sure you have longer lengths left. But to show you how to finish off the bail, I have this piece and then I'm just going to basically fold it over like this. So the end where you done your last knot is going to lie towards basically the back of your first knot, like this. And then I'm just going to use the same cords again, some are working cords, and I'm going to be doing another square knot. And this can be a little bit fiddly, especially if you don't have long lengths left. But do another square knot, but make sure to go around the back of my bail. So I trap that in there. So we secure the ends of the bail in place. Like that. So you can see it's looping around the back of the bail. And then when you tighten this, you're going to bring the back and the front together. So then from the side you can see you have a little loop there. Make sure to tighten this really nicely and try and get all the other cords out of the way. And then to secure this, I'm just going to do a couple of square knots. Now I'm just going to finish off this square knot. Again, do a regular one like you would do if you just had some holding cords. Just pretend basically that your cabochon piece is kind of part of your holding cords. So you go all the way around the back of them like so, and then tighten. Make sure everything sits right when you're tightening it, like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one more square knot, but before I do that I want to get rid of all these excess lengths of cord, because obviously they're just kind of sticking out here, not looking very nice. So what I'm going to do is get out some of my glue here, the GS Hypo cement, and I really like using this for this specifically because as you can see here it has a really nice fine nozzle to it, so a very fine tip, so that means I can get right in there where I want the glue to go specifically, so the glue doesn't go all over the place. So I'm just going to get my glue and then right where I've done my last square knot and where my cords are coming out from, so these excess cords, I just want to put some glue around there. So this is just to secure them in place, because obviously we want to get rid of some of these cords. So just put that glue there, and then you can let your glue dry a little bit, but you don't have to let it dry completely, because actually what will work nicely is let it dry enough to be tacky so it keeps hold of your cords, and then cut off these excess cords, and then while the glue is still a bit tacky, make your last square knot with your working cords, because then that will really bind itself in there with the glue. So just let it dry a little bit, and then we're going to cut off these excess cords. So I've now let my glue dry a little bit, and I have these 4 excess cords, so I'm just going to take my scissor and then just go in around just these 4 cords. Make sure you don't cut off your working cords. Around these, as close as you can get to where they're coming out without cutting anything else, and then cut them off, and then you've gotten rid of them now. And then just to seal it all in place, just going to do one last square knot with my working cords. As you can see, quite short lengths I've got left, but just take your time doing it around the whole bale, just like the one you just did. Tighten it, and the other half of that to make it one full square knot. Like so, and tighten that. Nice and tight. There. And then again, you have these left now. All I'm going to do is get my glue again and just put a bit around where these working cords are coming out from, just like you would finish off a macrame bracelet with square knots. So a bit around there, and then also just a little bit around the very last square knot you made to hold that in place, so that when you cut these excess lengths off, it's not going to come undone. Until you feel that you have enough on there, obviously not too much. There's no need for the excess glue, but this glue does dry clear as well, so if you do have a bit too much on there, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But just until you're happy and you feel it's going to be nice and safe. And then I would let that glue dry before I then go in and cut off these ends as well. So once you cut off that excess working cord, you're now left with your finished wrapped capuchon with macrame, and this is what it looks like. And then I just think the beads add a nice feature to it, but like I said, you can do this without the beads, so you're just using the cord to wrap the cabochon. And that's the back, and the back looks just as nice, so if you're wearing it and it flips over, it won't be an issue. And you have your bail here, as you can see, where you can put anything through there, whether it's a chain or whatever you want to wear it on. So that's your finished cabochon wrapping, and like I said, this technique will work for pretty much any size and shape of stone that you have. This is just to demonstrate with. I used an oval one, so you'll be able to use this for most different types of stones or cabochons that you have. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to wrap a stone or a cabochon with macrame. And this is what I'm going to be showing you, and this is what I call the looping technique. So this is what it looks like on the front and the back. And then I'm going to show you a few different variations to do for the top to attach it to something.